This tour I'm going to discuss about what's new in Windows Server 2012. So it's a new version of server from Windows, and after Windows Server 2008 R2, Microsoft launched the Windows Server 2012, and now it has been upgraded to Windows Server 2012 R2. So what are the things we're going to learn with this particular server and the new features which has been added, the additions we're going to cover in this small introduction video. So basically Windows Server 2012, its latest release known as Windows Server 2012 R2, as we have discussed that in the past they have Windows Server 2012. Now they have latest release which is known as Windows Server 2012 R2. So it's a successor of Windows Server 2008 R2, and the Windows Server 2012 was the successor of Windows Server 2008. So 2008 R2 was the latest addition in the server, and then the entire scenario has been changed from the Microsoft end, related to user interface, related to working environment, how the server works, how it can be managed. So the entire scenario is now changed compared to what it used to be in the past in Windows Server 2008 and in Windows Server 2003. So basically, it was first introduced as a code name Windows Server 8. So when the evaluation copy was released of Windows Server 2012, it was named as Windows Server 8. Remember, Windows 8, the concept was that the operating system was launched without start. That was the first thing we remember about Windows 8, and due to their push on tablet mode, that since the tablet and the mobile devices were uh, as are increasing, as it was introducing booming that time. So that is the reason why Windows introduced the operating system with the interface of tablet mode. So it was codenamed as Windows Server 8 that time, and now Windows Server 2012 no more supports to Itanium based computers. It means that the Itanium based editions are also no more available with this operating system, with this server operating system. Now, Moto of Windows Server 2012, it designed to deploy a private cloud in the organization. Not only it pushed the tablet mode, not only the concept was to manage the entire enterprise account or manage the entire organization or entire forest from one end or from one server. Not only that, but it also deploy the private cloud in the organization. But it means that you need not to worry about 12 systems, you need not to worry about 25 systems. With one interface, with one cloud, you can manage the entire forest, because what their concept is now that the entire forest will deploy as a cloud, and you can manage the operating entire operations from one end. You need not to go to one end to another end to just have managing the entire forest or cloud. So the concept was, when you are deploying the private cloud, you are deploying the virtualization. You will be more inclined to the virtualizations. So when you push the virtualization, you can add more servers into one, because in the virtualization environment you need not to worry about the compatibility. You need not to worry about whether we have enough of the hardwares or not. but you have the copies of one particular server, and then you can have those devices ready into one, and you can deploy into one. And it also provides the flexibility to access database and applications. So again, it will be entirely deployed in the cloud. You just need to access your database with your credentials, and you can access the application whatever you require with your database, and you can ready to access those. Now, when you talk about the editions, as I mentioned, that the editions were changed. Windows Server 2008 R2 had an edition of Web, Standard, Enterprise, Data Center, Itanium, Foundation, and HPC. Now remember, as I mentioned before, that the Server 2012 R2 and the Server 2012 no more supporting Itanium based computers, so Itanium version is already out. There is no web version as well, and the Enterprise version and HPC version. So these versions and these additions are no more continuing with Windows Server 2012. The latest version of Windows Server 2012 as R2 is Foundations, Essentials, Standard, and Data Center. Foundation, Essentials, Standard, Data Center are the four basic editions of Windows Server 2012, which is now continuing in R2 as well. So latest, let check the KB of Windows editions and the rows and the features. Let's check it out, the KB here. Now the KB, which says that when you talk about Windows Server 2012 R2 Data Center, when you're talking about Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard, Essential, and Foundation, so maximum number of users, obviously Data Center and the Standard version is the higher part of the editions, and the maximum the most higher part of the license of the Windows Server 2012. When it comes to Essential Foundation, it comes to concentrate on the smaller enterprises accounts, like the smaller enterprises groups, like of 25 PC or 15 PCs, and that's why the SMB connections will be limited to Foundation. But the Essential has the same SMB connections, maximum remote connection, which is again unlimited for Data Center and Standard, compared to Essentials only have 50 and Foundation have 15. IAS connection again is limited to their 50 and 10. Maximum 64-bit sockets will also have limitations between Essential and Foundation, but Data Center and Standard version have the maximum of it. Server can join a domain. Yes, they can join a domain, but for Essential and Foundation, migration is required. So you have to migrate your server as and direct access. So you have to check the documentation for direct access, enabling the direct access. When you're talking about the Hyper-V for Server 2012 R2, which is a feature, so you need to check these are the maximum number of users, which is again unlimited. SMB connections will be same as Data Center, Standard, and Essential. Remote connection in the Hyper-V will be limited to 250, and the IS connection will be limited to 50. There is no other limitation. In the Hyper-V, we get the maximum RAM 4 TB, and server can join a domain. Direct access is not available, so you cannot access the Hyper-V systems and directly have to go through to access it. And the storage part for standard and group also has the limitation work group storage part, which is a kind of a private server, which should have a maximum number of users will remain 50. The SME connection will be 250, and the remote connection will be 50. IS connection will be 50. Rest will the maximum RAM will cover the to 32 GB. So these are the server roles. When you talk about the server roles, which is available, yes, in maximum server rows will be available. Only in the foundation you won't get Hyper-V. Rest all the server rows will be available on compared to foundation, essential, and standard data center. So again, Hyper-V will not be available in essentials and foundation. You will not get a terminal services as well in essential. You will not get the lightweight directory service in essential. So terminal server to access files or application, we're not able to access those in the essential. When you're talking about the terminal servers gateway, you need to check out those in the documentation. It will not be available in essential, but rest will be available in standard and data centers. So the entire details will be there in the KB. These are the features and the rows cover on the Microsoft's new version Windows Server 2012. So when you compare to about the user interface, as I mentioned in the introduction of this video, that if you use Windows 8, you know those days that it was a huge mess when Microsoft introduced the concept of without start button. Now start button, it is very essential, and even now when Windows 10 looks to be quite attractive product, it because of Windows reintroduction of start, and they are working on start button. But the concept of start button, removing start button from the screen itself, was quite confusing. Although start button was there, but hovering screen to get a start button and pressing the start button in the keyboard to bring the entire face itself for programs, and then you have the entire scenarios of entire details of your applications, then you have icons there. So the scenario was quite confusion at that time, the why that Windows has launched such an operating system, or rather than they haven't been launched something like install button and something revolutionary on it. So when it comes to Windows 8.1, but since this Windows Server 2008 or Windows Server 8, basically code name of Windows Server 2012, when it was launching along with Windows 8, that time they never made that start button. So based on Metro UI, because they know that their thinking, their concept was to introduce Microsoft Windows Server 2012 was to bring or the UI should be something around Metro, or it is also known as One UI, to concentrate on the tablet systems that user need not to have the access of computer or laptop. You just can go ahead and access the Windows 10 through your mobile device itself. But the concept was really failed that time, because their push to bring a mobile device and their push to mobile device was failed drastically. They acquired Nokia at that time itself. So they were thinking about, or they were making out that, okay, we are launching Windows mobile devices and let's have the operating system, something like that. But they failed that time, and even now their push is back to what they had left with, and they introduced something around Windows 10 and the concept of now relaunching of Windows Server 2016 with the concept of the design of Windows Server 2000 or Windows 10 in Windows Server 2016. So, but the entire designing part is changed after Windows 8.1 launch, and in the Windows Server 2012 R2 you do get a start button as well, but the interface will remain the same like it used to have in Windows Server 2012. It was a redesign of Server Manager. So when Windows Server 2012 will launch, our new design of Server Manager was launched, and since the it we as we have introduced, as we have talked in the introduction of this video, that since the concept was to manage as many as operating system, as many as system or part of the domain in one particular centralized location, and that is why the server manager was designed, and server manager is designed like the way you can manage one or more server in one centralized location in one system itself. You need not to sit from one end to another to just manage your forest or manage your cloud. You just need a one system. You just need one server to manage the entire forest throughout the server manager, and that is how it has been designed. So it also has a server core mode, and server core mode now has 2300 command line interface. It is now has commands of 2300 has been introduced compared to 200 commandlets in the previous version of Windows Server 2008 R2. So now in the PowerShell, because this commandlets are now moved to the PowerShell, now deployed to the PowerShell version 3.0 was introduced in Windows Server 2012. So these much commands are now part of the PowerShell, which is also example of the Windows push in the command line mode as well, because they were getting the challenges from the Linux as well. And in the Linux core based operating system, where you can access the operating system with the one command, that is why the push of Windows push to keep their competition in the server code mode as well, because they can very much easily lose the battle if the organization stop moving to Linux based server modes or Linux based server operating system, because that's what very simple. They just need one command and you can access the entire operating system with ease. So that is why the more and more commandlets has been introduced compared to what it used to be in the past of Windows Server 2008 R2 with only 200 commandlets. So this is what the introduction of what's new in Windows Server 2012. We will cover more about Server Manager and what we have found in Server Manager. Also, we're going to deploy the operating system. We're going to deploy the Active Directory, DNS. We're going to find out how to deploy DHCP as well, how to manage Server Manager more in the upcoming videos. So hope you learned something about what's new in Windows Server 2012. Thank you for watching Tech Engineer TV.